Hello, and welcome to the first edition of A Very Fine Notion. A notion, you might ask. If you're a sewer, you probably have one idea. If you're a literary person, you may have a different idea. But a notion is a concept or a belief about something. A notion could also be an impulse or a desire, especially one of a whimsical kind. This is according to the dictionary. And finally, a notion can be a sewing tool. And for those of us who are quilters and love all things sewing, we love our notions. In fact, probably one of my favorite notions is a seam ripper, but we're not going to talk about that one today. Notions are charming, and the history of notions and the old objects that women and men have used for sewing over the centuries, I think are fascinating, almost as fascinating as the products that they create. The quilts, the clothing, the decor for their homes. So I just wanted to do this quick little pop-up and share with you some notions that I recently acquired that I'm just delighted with. And I hope this inspires you to connect with people from the past who share your passion for sewing and quilting and stitching. I think we have a lot to learn from the people who came before us. So this is part of a series I hope to start, just little pop-ups that I'm going to share with you periodically about very fine notions. And I hope to do some other pop-ups and some other classes, but I'm just trying this for fun right now. So let me know in the subscribe button if you're interested. If this is something you'd like me to continue, I may just do it anyway, just because I love doing research and I love sharing what I found out. So the object we're going to talk about today, the notion we're going to talk about today, is a thread holder. And specifically a thread holder that is made out of wood, called a treenware thread holder. There are several different varieties of thread holders, and I'm just learning about them and exploring this whole fun world. Today, we have a million choices, and the original patent for a thread holder has been improved upon and embellished and changed based on your needs. But here's a brief history. It was not always the case that there were tons of options. And because it wasn't always the case that thread was available on a spool. And we've just become so accustomed to seeing thread on a spool, but it was not always that way. Thread has changed over time and has advanced with technology. And knowing a little bit about the history of thread can help us date quilts. It can help us understand the notions that were used to create sewn items. And so I'd like to share with you a tiny bit about thread, and at some point I'd love to do a very fine notion pop-up broadcast to tell you about spools and how thread became such an integral part of life. But for today, in about 1800, cotton thread became available to hand sewers. Before that, cotton was not used in the United States and Europe. It was silk and linen. And there's a vast, very fascinating history wrapped around that. Rarely homespun cottons were created and wool threads were created, but they just weren't durable. They weren't strong enough. They couldn't twist them and get that ply that we're so accustomed to, and maybe we don't even know what it is or that we even have it, but they just couldn't build strong enough thread on a spinning wheel. So wooden spools of thread that we are so accustomed to, in fact today we don't even see them made out of wood. Here's a charming little wooden spool. I love these. I have a whole bowl of them, and I pick them up whenever I can because the wooden spools are not made anymore. But back in 1820, about around 1820, between 1820 and 1830, various sources have a little bit different time dates. Spools were produced out of wood, and they could be returned for refill. So it was kind of like the first eco-friendly item that I know of out there. This product grew and expanded during the Industrial Revolution, and I would love to share with you the whole history of that at some point. Like I said before, it's very fascinating. So here we are now, 1830, 18-ish. We've got these fabulous spools and all these different colors. And if you can imagine, I'm sure sewers in the 1800s are no different than we are today. We want to collect it all, right? I have probably tried every thread that's come out because I just have to try it. Has to be a part of my sewing world. So what were sewers to do with all this thread? Thread spools of this sort, as charming and adorable as they are, were just not fit to be seen in a lady's parlor. And decorative holders had to be developed to house this essential part of typically a woman's world. And so these sewing items were created, and these thread stands or thread boxes, the ones I want to talk to you about today, were made of wood. But I do also want to share with you about the first patent for a thread holder. It was Solomon Danlius of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and this was his patent in 1886. And in his patent write-up, he says that he describes how this is made and how that it can be improved upon, and the specifications for how to build a spool holder. And this application was sent to the patent office, and referring to the drawing, there was a base and a stick to hold the spool, and it was developed so that sewers could pull the thread easily and not have to mess about with the spool, and cut the length they wanted, and so it would glide easily off of the spool. So that was his justification for his creation. I bet there was somebody in his life who was a sewer. Anyway, so he created this basic sewing thread holder, and then of course we're dealing in the kind of the gilded Victorian age beginnings, middle, and things were fancy in your parlor, and so of course the spool holders became fancy. And the ones I want to share with you today are made from wood, and they are referred to as treenware spool holders. Treen means of a tree, basically. That's all it means. And it's a generic name for a small handmade functional household object made of wood. So this excludes furniture and chairs, cabinetry, clocks, cupboards. It's highly collectible and for its beauty, because as you'll see in a minute, the patina on the wood of these beautiful thread holders is what makes my heart skip a beat. I love it. Treenware typically included things like snuff boxes, needle cases, which I want to share a little bit about those someday down the road, spoons, shoehorns, chopping boards, and agricultural tools. Treen is turned or carved from woods like box, beech, sycamore, and tree burls. Tree burl is that big knot in the tree. And many North American indigenous peoples use these tree burls, and from mature trees like black ash, maple, cherry, and oak. The spools in the treenware spool holders that I'm going to share with you may or may not be hidden, and there are portholes you'll see on one example. And you're probably familiar with this. I'm sure you've seen these before. They're little holes that feed the thread. You feed the thread through. They glide through nicely. Typically, a spool holder would hold 8 to 12 spools. And of course, we already talked about the patent. So let me show you some of these lovelies. The first one I want to show you is just charming. And you can see what I'm talking about, the patina. If you felt it, it's just smooth as silk and beautiful. So you can see this little cutie. Now the threads are still visible, so I guess that's, technically okay, because they're organized in a nice, lovely fashion that was approved for parlor use. So what's really fun about this spool holder, and these, the patent for this spool holder that I shared with you, the original one was just a simple stand, was in 1886. So I'm assuming, I don't know for sure, I need to do more research, but these spool holders came in shortly after that, if not well into the 1900s. So then we have these adorable little spools and these spikes, and there's the main case base in the center, and then this lifts off for your last shelf. So charming, love it. Don't want to touch it. I'm going to really take a hard look at these spools at some point and try to research where they came from and how old they are. And anyone who's taken a class with me before will know that I love to weave this kind of stuff into my classes, my quilting classes. Anyway, I think the labels on the spools are probably just as fascinating as the spool holders. All right, the next one is just yummy, yummy, delicious. I just love it. So like I said, that patina on that wood is just gorgeous. And this one has the little portholes that we were talking about. And these are metal. So they're little metal grommets, almost like a grommet for a string on a piece of clothing. Looks like there's a little dust there. We've had tremendous fires this last week, so sorry about the little dust. So this would be your lovely, lovely spool box sitting in your parlor, and then you lift the lid, and down inside are your spools. And this lovely pin cushion is one that my sister made, but when I purchased this spool holder, that's what it looked like. And my sister, who's very creative, had this in her little booth. She sells from an antique booth, so I got that. I knew it would fit just right. Anyway, look at that beautiful wood. Now, had I spoken with my husband prior to this, he might have been able to identify the wood. I'm not an expert. I'm thinking cherry or walnut, and I think the first one may be oak, but the patina is lovely. And then this one I received from my sister-in-law. This one she got purchased from a farmhouse in Illinois, and it was from a 90-year-old man, and it was his mother's. So this is old. This also came without the pin cushion, and I popped that on the top. This looks like oak to me, and of course all your threads would be visible. This didn't come with any threads. And then the magic on this one is when you lift it, you've got this lovely case to keep your scissors and any other items, maybe your glasses, your spectacles. I don't know what else you might need for sewing. But I just thought these were yummy, wonderful, beautiful, very fine notions. And I wanted to share them with you today, and I hope to share more in the future. Let me know if you enjoyed this and if you'd like to see more. And until then, have a great day sewing. Bye-bye.